where we get level, bringing you real people, real issues, real conversations. My hope for you is that you walk away from the show inspired and equipped to level up in your own life and leadership. If you would like to catch a copy of the best of notes and quotes from today's show, please subscribe to my email list at louisehreed.com. Finally, you regular listeners know that I love to give away exclusive Lady Boss loyalty as a way of saying thank you to you for spending time with me. To get your hands on some of this exclusive swag, simply comment on a podcast episode with the hashtag LadyBossLoyalty, and you'll automatically be entered into the monthly draw. Without further ado, let me introduce you to today's guest. Dr. Amir Georges Sabongui, which I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, completed an undergraduate honors degree in experimental neuroscience, specializing in stress and addictions research before completing a master's degree in developmental clinical psychology. After serving over 10 years as a senior officer in the Canadian Navy, specializing in naval operations and military crisis intervention, his doctoral research focused on identifying and activating resilience factors to protect soldiers from the impact of armed conflict. He is the recipient of numerous awards and distinctions, including the Award of Excellence from the Canadian Psychological Association. Today, he uses his in-depth knowledge of applied leadership and resilience to work closely with Canada's largest corporations to develop burnout prevention and recovery programs, as well as workplace mental health initiatives. More personally, Dr. George, as I refer him to, is an incredible human being and psychologist who pretty much saved my soul. Have you ever met someone whose impact on you can never be sufficiently repaid? Yep, that's Dr. George. He's a person who still today has far-reaching implications on and in my life, despite having only spent 2 hours in his office with him. There's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Dr. George, welcome to the show.
You're not supposed to make me cry before we start, Louise. I'm all choked up now. Thank you. It's really, really kind. Thank you.
It's anyone who knows me knows of you. So my mom, my sister, my partner, my kids, my friends at NAV Canada, who were the gracious ones, despite not working there anymore, I think of them often and have thanked them regularly, if not verbally, certainly in my heart, for having connected me with you at a time where it was most needed. So this is a joy.
Yeah, well, it really is. Well, I got to tell you, what comes from the heart enters the heart. And when you were reading your intro, it just really gave me a little hug. So thank you for that, because even shrinks are people too. And so when people say, hey, doc, how's it going? I never know how to answer that question. But today you gave me a nice hug. So thank you.
And you're so welcome. And I'm glad that it was felt as it was intended. You said an interesting thing just now, I think is something that people wrestle with who aren't even psychologists. So I can't imagine the extra layer of complexity for you in this profession. When you said, when you're asked, how are you doing? You don't really know how to answer that. That's something that I think even the average, whatever average means, but the average human being, certainly within Canada, United States, struggles with. What do you my show's about getting real. I was mentioning that to you at the onset of the show. Real conversations, real people. It's really kind of a no BS show. And so what do you think that we need to all get more level and get more real about?
Good question. So here's a strange paradox of being human. And I read this beautiful quote last year. It said, a human eyeball cannot see itself. And, I really meditated on this quote because, sometimes it takes me years to understand something. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. That means my biggest blind spot in my life is myself. And so I haven't really had a chance to meet myself, especially as a psychologist. I'm always stepping into somebody else's experience. So such a banal question is like, hey, how are you doing? It's like, I don't know. Hold on, let me check in. And sort of reconnecting with myself to be able to answer that question in a sincere and authentic way, because I don't want to just say, oh, I'm fine. I actually don't know how I'm doing. Hold on, let me check. Body, how you doing? Mind, how you doing? And I think that we connect with people at the same depth that we're willing to go to ourselves. And so, you know, when I met you, in 3 minutes, we can have a deeper conversation than some people that I've known for 30 years. And that's probably because you were willing to meet me there at that depth of level. So I think the more courageous we are to meet ourselves and connect with ourselves, the deeper we connect with people instantly. We were just chit-chatting before we started, and you said, yeah, I'm terrible at small talk. And I said, oh yeah, I hear you, sister. I don't even know how to have small talk anymore. And I didn't realize it kind of makes me a little bit socially inept, because I think this level of depth is normal. And, and I think for a lot of people, it's like vertiginous. It's like, oh, sorry. Okay, how do we do small talk again? Oh yeah, nice weather we've been having, right?
It's
Yeah,
really funny you say that. I think some people, you know, when we were in the workplace, some people, you know, I saw them visibly take a fraction of a step back when they saw me walk into an elevator, because they're like, oh no. Like even in the course of an elevator ride, it's like, I just go there.
Awesome.
And so you mention a word that I think is used regularly, but I think is we really underappreciate what it takes to be that, and that's courageous. What does courage mean, and what does it take to be courageous, to pull back the layers of ourselves?
I think, you know, when people tell me that they know who they are, I call bullshit. I think you're allowed to say that before the age of 5 and after the age of 85. But anywhere in between, we're too neurotic, and we're too concerned about shaping an identity that's socially acceptable. And so we slowly start the process of alienating ourselves, and then trying to reconnect and rediscover ourselves, like a lifelong process. And I joke around with some of my patients, like, you know, maybe we should go take a trip down in your basement, you know, and the basement represents your subconscious. But I got to tell you, if we're going to go poking around in your basement, we better bring a flashlight, because you never know. There might be monsters under the stairs that are grabbing your feet. And there might be some weird stuff you've hidden down there. And so usually for my birthday, so this is a very auspicious day, because my birthday is tomorrow. And usually what I like to do for my birthday is the opposite of celebrate. I like to sort of retreat and go to some, you know, monastery or some Guatemalan jungle or whatever. And just, you know, when you're disconnected from all the external solicitations, you get to really journey inwards and reconnect with yourself and say, oh, so instead of going down with a flashlight, sometimes I try to have the courage to just turn on the whole damn thing. And it's both exciting and terrifying and all that stuff. But I got to say, I'm starting to really like myself on a lot of levels. And I had this really beautiful experience last year at my birthday retreat, which was, I got to meet all my previous selves, you know, the young boy that I used to be, and the sort of idealistic adolescent, and then the sort of courageous naval officer. And then, you know, I figured out, hey, maybe I have a brain that I want to develop. And I went through, and it's like, wow, I have so much gratitude. It's good to be me. And that's not a feeling that's so easy to find, that feeling like, hey, thank you, little boy. And thank you, dude, for, you know, going through all these hard times so you could learn these skills and have something of import to share with people because of your lived experience. And so that sense of, you don't have to have any kind of acceptance for any past trauma. You know, they're like, well, I don't want to forgive people who treated me wrong. Like, yeah, you don't have to forgive them. Fuck them. You don't even have to accept what they did to you. But you do have to have some compassion and recognition for the you that endured and went through all this stuff and emerged a bigger, stronger person with maybe a voice that could have a positive impact. So yeah, slowly, I'm getting to meet all these little parts of me that have been sort of left behind, and invite them into the future and really develop some gratitude.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know where to go next, because you said things about the basement. You said things about gratitude, certainly. And very interested as well in this. You're a psychologist as well as exploring spirituality, and the blend of that I think is really cool. Let me maybe start with the basement analogy that you gave, because that was very, very, very simple and powerful. And I really appreciate all of like the simplicity that you bring to what you do. You make it very, very relatable and tangible, and it's all based on science. Clearly you've got your PhD, but it's just human speak. We've all got a basement, and once I didn't know I had a basement until I went to see you. And when you told me I had a basement, I'm like, I actually don't think I do. And so you're just saying, you call people's bullshit, and you very professionally and succinctly, pretty much in different words than this told me I did. And again, kindly repeated back to me words you'd heard over the course of our first hour together. And I was like, holy shit, I do have a basement. I do have a basement. How would you encourage or invite people to start exploring maybe their own basements? Should they not have someone they're able to reach out to like you right now? What's something that they might be able to do do so somewhat, can you do it safely? Like, I don't know, because you don't know what's there.
Yeah, you don't know what's there. And sometimes it's good to have somebody holding your hand. And, I really am fascinated by the sort of the 19th century and early 20th century scientists, because, especially the physicians, they would always experiment on themselves. And so I always think I'm not going to inflict anything on my patients that I'm not willing to inflict on myself. And so when I don't like going down to the basement, but I know it's important. It's funny.
I'm actually still afraid of my basement. Okay, in real life, my really real physical basement. So my emotional basement. Oh
yeah, right. But the flashlight that I refer to is the flashlight of our awareness and our consciousness. And so when you go down, just be aware and try to turn those eyes inwards. But in the same way that we give compassion and embrace people in all of their faults, trying to give ourselves the same kind of compassion and acceptance and just witnessing ourselves. And so, at first you go down with a tiny little flashlight because you're afraid of what you find, but the more you visit your basement, the more you kind of make friends with, the same way when kids are afraid of the monsters under the bed, well, you just turn on the lights and look with them and see, hey, those monsters aren't so scary. And part of me reacquiring or reconnecting with those alienated parts of me is there's some dark shit down there. Mm-hmm. But the dark stuff can actually be really powerful. So, we all have darkness that could be violent or rageful or shameful or whatever the heck is hiding in there. And if we make peace with the monsters in our basement, you can see that how, it's not about amputating your violent nature. It's about befriending it and using that to sometimes break down barriers, sometimes have the courage to break down your own barriers, because that's a violent act. People think enlightenment is this beautiful thing where you're sitting on a Himalayan mountaintop, meditating and getting hemorrhoids or whatever people do up there in the Himalayas. But no, enlightenment is like completely destructive because it just shatters your sense of reality. Like, oh my God, how the hell do I rebuild myself now? And so there's a bit of a leap of faith in it. But in a moment of lucidity, and unfortunately part of the human condition is we're so myopic and forgetful that you have these beautiful moments of insight. It's like, God damn, I should leave myself a note somewhere because this is really good stuff that's emerging. And I always think that in these moments of transcendence or meditation, or if I'm like doing a retreat, I'm usually fasting, so I don't know it might be the sleep deprivation or the food deprivation and I'm hallucinating, I don't know. But I like to think that I get these like nuggets of wisdom that are transmitted to me from where, I don't know, but it clearly doesn't come from me because I don't think I'm that smart. But so I'll write these little nuggets of wisdom, and sometimes it takes me years to really understand what I wrote. And so in one of these ephemeral moments of lucidity, I actually saw how this sort of random, chaotic jumping around in my life is a perfectly linear path that led me exactly to where I am. So my friends in the Navy are like, well, you can't be a psychologist. I knew you in the Navy. You were, you had nothing to do with psychology. You were, badass naval officer. And then people who know me as a psychologist, like, there's no way you were ever in the Navy. Look at you. You're like all soft and mushy. I'm like, yeah, it's good to be a brokenhearted warrior sometimes because, you don't realize you're doing this, but okay, so I don't know why the hell I joined the Navy, but I know that in retrospect, it definitely gave me the skills to be a warrior so that I can fight for things that I think are really important. And then, okay, so maybe I'll go to school to have something intelligent to say. And then maybe I'll discover that I have a heart that's, very human, broken, imperfect. And so as you develop, you see in retrospect, oh my God, that's why I did that. So I could get these skills, so I could develop this forum and have this thing to say to these people. And then this is going to sound a little flaky, but why not? Let's dive in. So
Do it.
it's about do it. I know. So 2 years ago, this is a very weird experience. It was New Year's Day, the next day after New Year's Eve. And I woke up just in tears, crying. My girlfriend was really worried. She's like, are you okay? Are you okay? And it's like, I just had the weirdest dream. And like, I have goosebumps as I'm telling you this. I said, I dreamt that I died. And, and I was held to account for everything that I'd done in my life. And this voice asked me, in the short time you've been given, how much love and beauty have you created? And the only answer that came up was, not enough. I could have done better. And so I hold that as my moral compass. Like every day, have I created more love and beauty in the world? Have I really developed my potential to my fullest extent so that I can really give everything of myself, leave everything, I don't want to die saying, gee, I probably could have given more. I was so cheap with my feelings or my love, whatever. I just want to, give it all up. Create as much love and beauty. That's my litmus test.
Talk about again, another powerful and simple, breaking it down to something powerful and simple. Simple concept, not easy to do. And thanks for rocking my mascara a little bit. I might not be able to get my roots done, but I can still put makeup on.
You see, this is an example of all these little quotes in my little quote book that I call them transmissions because they come through me, but they don't come from me. And one of them was, what comes from the heart enters the heart. And so I try to remind myself that feeling is a scary proposition, but hey, it's the best game in town. Lots of time to be dead when we're dead. Let's try to live fully while we're still around.
And as I reminded you of something that you said to me in that 2 hours that I spent with you a number of years ago now. If you're not busy, if you don't get busy dying, if you don't get busy living, get busy dying, or you are busy dying. And that really was poignant and stuck with me. And I was thrilled shortly after to tell you that I got the tattoo, because I remember sitting in your awesome office and I was like, I've always wanted a tattoo. I don't really know where I should get it. And you asked me why I hadn't had it. So we talked about that a little bit. And that's what you said one of those things at some point. And as soon as I got my tattoo a few months later, some other big things had happened, like, I'd left my husband. Anyway, I got the tattoo and I remember texting you or sending you a message, sending you an email saying, I got the tattoo. But it's true, right? These cliches and these simple statements, they become meaningful when you actually sit with them to understand the deeper meaning. Because if something seems too simple, you've probably kept it too superficial.
Well, I got to tell you, I probably spent too many years developing my intellect and thinking that was the best tool in my toolbox is to have a big brain and be really smart. And then I realized that, you know what, being smart is cool, but we're missing a whole dimension of the human experience. And so I try to remind myself every day, just okay, smart's good, but feel that thing that you don't want to feel. And you'd be surprised what is lurking in there in our heart that we don't want to feel. And we're so good. I mean, I'm a genius at avoiding. I'm very good at keeping myself busy. But in some moments where I invite myself to feel that thing that you don't want to feel, it gets a little hard to breathe sometimes. So when my friends got a tattoo and it says, just breathe. And when I saw that, I said, oh my God, you must have gone through so much pain and heartbreak that, thank you for remembering to breathe sometimes.
Mm. You said the word feel, that I actually have said that, having worked in HR now for 20 years, is an F word, one of the 3 F words that exists in business.
Really?
It's an F word. Feeling? I've spent most of my time in high tech. Feeling? Do you think that's a word that gets either used a lot or shown a lot, other than anger, which is an acceptable feeling to be expressed in corporate? I think that's something that really gets in the way of our humanity as leaders as well, so spilling over into the workplace. Okay, where am I going to go next? I know one of the things that you talk about is resilience, and I'm wondering what you can share with us about why some people shine under pressure while others fall apart.
Do you want an intellectual answer that's like the crux of my PhD thesis, or do you?
I want the real
I gotta
shit.
tell you. So,
right.
Okay. It's funny because the whole idea of shining under pressure, and that was the title of my doctoral dissertation, was like diamonds or dust, why some people shine under pressure while others fall apart. And when I was in the Navy, I had a sort of a strange moment where we were on operations and we had a little meal break, and I looked over and I noticed one of my sailors sitting alone eating his lunch. I said, well, that's odd. You know, here we are all bonding and eating together. Why is that guy all alone? And then, of course, invariably, 2 weeks later, we had to literally helicopter him out in a medical evacuation because he just completely fallen apart. And so I just said, okay, note to self, when you see somebody eating their lunch alone, it's not a good sign. It's either because everybody's pissing him off and he needs to withdraw, or he's pissing everybody off and the group has kicked him out. So I said, okay, let's go see if we can actually study this. And so when I was doing my doctoral research, I was sort of preparing my exit plan from the Navy, and I went back to National Defense Headquarters and said, excuse me, I have a little project to do for school. Do you mind if I borrow 1,000 soldiers for a year? And they said, oh yeah, it's a great idea, George, go ahead. So I got to poke and prod 1,000 soldiers to figure out, if you look at people who are naturally resilient, like people who literally use adversity to discover a deeper potential, and then they like shine so bright that they illuminate the way for others, like natural leadership. And then you compare it to those that are, I don't want to say fragile, but maybe tend to collapse under pressure, implode. So, you know, we poked and prodded and developed like a gazillion questions to ask these people, everything about their personality style and their coping strategies and the social networks and, you know, relationship with their parents and friends and blah, 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 a million, how many hours they slept and all kinds of things, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, cool, we're going to find some amazing personality factors, and I'm going to develop a personality test we can give people, and I'm going to be rich because I'm going to sell this to corporations and all this. And then I put all the data in the gigantic statistical sausage machine, and boom, it comes out that, yeah, you know, your personal qualities and your coping strategies and your personality structure are important. But at some point, everybody's going to hit a wall. You're going to hit a wall where you are not enough. And I don't mean like you're inadequate as a human being. I mean, life is going to break you. And in those moments, you have to have created a really strong social support network. So you get these soldiers, you literally parachute them into a brand new social group for an operation. And, you know, within 24 hours, some people have already become best friends with everybody. So it's not just having a great social network, it's the ability to recreate high quality relationships with people. So low conflict and high social support. And you start by investing. So you're sort of dropping little goodwill credits everywhere you go. And one day you're going to have to make a withdrawal on the goodwill bank. And if you haven't invested in all these relationships with people, well, then people don't just mobilize. But if you have, and I've seen this over and over and over, it's like, yeah, you're hot shit, but you know, life is going to break everybody. And at some point, it's going to take a lot of humility for you to lean on other people and ask for help. And you want to make sure that you've invested in that social network, that sort of a social safety net that's going to catch you when we fall. And the most we can hope for in life is not to have an easy life. It's It's to have some great friends that can hold our hands and walk through the fire with us, and maybe even sometimes carry us some of the way. There's another one of the things that makes me cry is, there's the story of the footsteps in the sand.
Oh, don't,
so
I know,
guy,
footprints, I know.
Are you gonna cry with me? Okay, hold my hand. I was just reading it. I was just reading it again the other day, because it's so true. It's like, okay, so this guy is looking back at his life and he sees two sets of footprints in the sand that represents his life journey. And then he notices that in the toughest periods of his life, so there's only one set of footprints. And so then he's like, he meets God and he says, hey, during my toughest moments in life, why did you abandon me? And God says, I didn't abandon you, bro. Those are the moments that I was carrying you. It's like, oh, that is so true, that in those moments, like, we've all had those moments where you're sort of like face down and you can't take another breath, and just somehow miraculously something just gives you that little boost, that little wind in your sails that helps you take another breath, takes you carry on. So in one of my meditations, I had an argument with God. I said, yo, bro, the fuck, man? Thanks for showing up, but don't you think you can show up a little earlier in the process before, like, I'm a complete mess and totally broken? This is how I talk to God, by the way.
I love it. It doesn't surprise me. It's great.
Yeah. And he said, actually, no, that's not how it works. You take care of what's possible, and I'll take care of what's impossible. And the guy delivers, man. What can I tell you?
Ah, wow. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, life is going to humble all of us, right? It could be that arrogance of youth that makes you think you can do anything, because we need that delusion. Yeah. I think most entrepreneurs are a little bit delusional, and thank God for them. But then we also need to remember that nobody gets out of this alive, and nobody gets through this alone.
I think there's so many little valuable takeaways from what you just shared. One of them being really bringing to life the importance of, as you were saying, you really valued, as do I, you do and did and still do, education and intelligence, but that's only half of it. When you need to be in those moments, you need to be carried. It's not your intelligence that's going to get you through. It's going to be those heartfelt relationships that you've nurtured that carry you.
In those moments of lucidity where I could look back on my life and it all makes sense, it's almost like every decade has been marked by a quest. And so in my 20s, I've always been fascinated by human potential. And it's one of my sort of, neuroscience is like one of my fascinations, but human potential is another area of fascination for me. I think my favorite hobby is learning, by the way. So in my 20s, I just wanted to push my human potential in terms of physical ability. And so, I was very athletic and just try to push those limits. And then in my 30s, I said, well, okay, that's cool. Now I know what my body can do. Let's see what I can do with my brain. And so, you go back to school and you get a PhD, and, I said, okay, I put some interesting things in there. And then in my 40s, I discovered I had a heart. I was like, oh, shit. I might be physically fit and intellectually fit, but I have no idea how to navigate this quagmire. I don't know what my 50s is going to be, but, it's my 50th birthday. So we'll see what the next decade is going to look like.
And it's your 50th birthday tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Happy birthday tomorrow. And I'm glad we're kicking it off. And so you mentioned that at the outset of the show that you normally go on a retreat to, I don't know if it's honor, because you said you don't really celebrate, but I don't know if it's in honor of your birthday. I don't know the right term to use. What are you doing this year for it? Recognizing that you can't do it because of COVID in the way that you had originally wanted.
Yeah, I read a great book once, and it was about different paths to spiritual enlightenment. So the cute thing about this book is, like, he says, well, I know a lot of people look for spiritual enlightenment in a life of sort of giving up on worldly pleasures, but that's not our purpose. Our purpose is experiential. And so, part of enlightenment is also to, like, just dive full on to the human experience. And that, it's like, yeah, hell yeah, I can do that. So probably what I'm going to do for this year's spiritual journey is maybe something more, I don't know, just live as intensely as possible. Hopefully we'll be out of this confinement. We're just going to be so excited to see actual human people and give them a hug. And yeah, remember what it's like to be human. And I think that the essence of being human is experiential. So if I can tell you a little anecdote, you know, the first week I got back from Christmas vacation this year, was like literally a Monday morning, first day back, 9 o'clock. My first patient, I say, so, you know, how's your Christmas vacation? He says, oh, it's not bad, doc, you know, but I had one really bad day where I find myself in the metro in Montreal, standing on the yellow line, waiting for the train. And, you know, I really started contemplating, should I take a step forward and jump in front of the train or take a step back? I was like, okay, good morning.
That's heavyweight.
Hell yeah. Take me back to that moment. And if you don't mind, we'll stand on that yellow line together. And I want you to help me understand what made you decide to take a step back, because that's an unbelievably courageous decision to make. Like, you weren't taking a step back into a life full of unicorns and rainbows. You were stepping back into a pile of shit. Why the fuck would you choose that? So it started this whole conversation as, well, what makes my life worth living? And then what makes a life worth living? And why do we exist at all? And why did the universe choose to exist? And I think the moment that you're standing on that yellow line contemplating these things is probably a really bad time to start contemplating this stuff. You're not anywhere near lucid enough to come up with the answers. And I think it's important to have these answers in our back pocket, because when we have our little yellow line moments, we have to remember. And so part of that conversation was about, you know, why do we mourn the death of the child so much more than the death of somebody who's older? And it's because the child hasn't had a chance to experience life and could contribute their gifts to the world yet. And we see all this potential that still hasn't manifested or been nourished or emerged. And that's what we mourn. We want to give our kids the best possible human experience, you know? I don't know about you guys, but I work super hard for smiles on my kids' faces. I even tell them, hey, I get paid in smiles, man. Like, okay.
I get paid in kisses.
You get paid in kisses.
I do. I say, that'll cost you. They know. They come give me a kiss on my cheek. Yeah. So yes. So
creating smiles, creating experience is, I think, part of the essence of existing. So I always think, like, you know, all these geniuses, like these culinary geniuses who cook up these, you know, magical dishes that just are almost transcendent. You have these foodgasms when you eat them, or some musician who composes music, or some genius mathematician who figures something out. Well, why the hell do they spend so much time doing this? Well, it's because they want to share, because they want somebody else to experience this with them. What's the point of cooking a great meal if you can't share the experience? What's the point of writing beautiful music if you can't share the experience? And so I really, really believe that at its essence, the universe exists to be experienced. And the worst thing we could do is just sort of walk around like the zombie apocalypse and be numb to all the love and beauty and miraculous stuff that's going on around us. Open up. I'm in a constant state of awe, constantly, because I really think, like, this human experience is mind-blowing.
I actually really saw as an experience, not just visually through my eyes, a sunrise today for the first time, my first time. I had early rising boys, and so I have literally been up and awake and viewing the sunrise with my eyes many, many times. Thankfully, they're teenagers now, so that's not the case. But I've been getting up at about, you know, 4:45, 5 o'clock for the last couple of weeks. And today I went outside with my partner to watch it rise over the Gatineau Hills here in Ottawa, for those who don't. And now, granted, there's some houses and some hydro lines.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some hydro lines and some houses in the way, but I'm ignoring that for the purpose of this story, because, you know, I was looking beyond those. I'm only sharing this because it's like, there are so many things for us to see, whether it's for the first time or just with that beginner's mindset sort of thing. So much richness each day in front of us that I just feel like I'm seeing. I don't know about you, I'd like to get your thoughts on this, but I'm seeing some people waking up to that during this pandemic that we're in. Certainly not everyone. Everyone's in some people are in some horrific situations, and I don't want to at all suggest that this is all they need to do is get up at 5 and watch the sunrise, right? But there still are plenty others who I'm seeing waking up to these types of experiences. What have you noticed?
Well, I got to tell you something. I'm a scientist, so as a scientist, I'm going to deny ever having said this, but I'm also a human being, like whose mind is blown constantly. And I saw a beautiful interview with this Nobel-winning chemist, like Nobel laureate, one of the smartest human beings on the planet. And he won the Nobel Prize in chemistry because he was able to decipher the code that trees use to send molecules through the roots, and then they use the roots of the mycelium, which are the roots of the mushrooms in the forest. And so this molecule transmits through their roots into the roots of the mycelium and creates this like internet in the forest where the trees are actually talking to each other. And he decoded the molecular structure of this thing, which is dimethyltryptamine. And so like the interviewer was fascinated. Oh my God, this is like amazing. The trees are talking using this molecule. And he said, yeah, and this molecule is a universal. All living creatures create DMT, dimethyltryptamine. And it's like, this is what helps us resonate with all of nature. And so the interviewer was like fascinated. So, but how does it work? He just looked and he says, well, it's magic, of course. I was like, oh, thank you for the reminder. We need to have room for magic in our lives, you know? And so you don't want to go to a magic show with some brilliant autistic guy who's like, oh, I know where he hid the cards. Like, shut up. Let us be amazed by the magic of it all, you know? Leave some room for magic in your life.
Oh, I love that. Leave some room for magic in your life.
Yeah. So I think watching a sunrise at 5 o'clock in the morning is curative. I think awe and bliss, you know, it's such a corny Hallmark thing, but you know, instead of cursing the darkness, light a small candle. And the reason why it's a corny cliche is because it's so true. So getting up at 5 and just being amazed at the magic of the world turning into the sun every day. It's like, yeah, let's experience some humble gratitude for this moment. This is magical. I think it's curative. Yeah.
It is. And I love how over the last number of years, I don't know how many, 20, maybe more, that we're actually seeing the science, the neuroscience, and
yes,
to back this stuff up, that the magic isn't just woo-woo. I took something called wellness and lifestyle management after I finished university, and I graduated from that program in 1997. And in 1997, I would whisper the word wellness because people honestly thought I was going to do voodoo on them or something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but remember, the 80s and 90s were the era where psychology was boiled down to the science of human behavior. Like we're these mechanical automatons, and you know, we're not thinking and feeling beings, and we're not creative beings. And if you can't feel it, quantify it, and measure it, then it doesn't exist. And so thank God psychology is matured and evolved, and we have room for abstraction now and studying this woo-woo stuff. And the more so one of the things that just I'm a student perpetually. And so I was reading this wonderful discovery about these mirror neurons, you know, like, so when we were telling the stories to each other, because, you know, because I'm feeling something, then our brains are literally synchronizing and we're feeling the same thing. And it's because 20% of our neurons are mirror neurons. And so they literally act like these little antennas and they synchronize emotionally to the people that we're around. Like, well, this is amazing. So when all these hippies are like, you know, man, we're all connected, dude. It's like, yeah. I agree. It's not esoteric hippie stuff. It's actual neuroscience. And so, like, as if that's not mind-blowing enough that we can actually feel each other. Then I was reading this new discovery on microchimera. So about 2 years ago, there's a study where they're doing these post-mortem autopsies on women's brain, trying to find the genetic transmitters of Alzheimer's disease. And they're poking around these brains, doing assays. And they're like, hey, what the hell is male DNA doing in these women's brains? And they were able to trace it back that these were vestigial cells from the babies that these women carried. So the placental cells, after the baby's born, some of the cells migrate to the woman's brain and lodge there permanently. So you, Louise, have little bits of your babies in your brain for the rest of your life. It's like, well, that's even more crazy. Like, what's the function of these cells that you carry? So when moms say, oh yeah, I feel my kids, you know, something happens to one of your kids in the middle of the night and you just like bolt wide awake. I'm sure that what seems so woo-woo esoteric today, we're going to find out in a couple of years that, oh no, these are the brain cells of the babies that are perfectly tuned to receive the frequencies of the kids that the moms carried.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've always said that
Mm-hmm.
once you have kids, it's like a piece of you is forever
Mm-hmm.
a piece of like your heart. Clearly it's felt elsewhere as well, but a piece of the heart is external to you. And you have eventually you have zero control over it, yet it hurts you as it would hurt yourself.
Yes. So this whole idea of us as human beings were contained by the skin bag, but that's not true. We clearly transcend our skin. We clearly have connections with other people, whether it's our kids or our loved ones. And I'd even say that we're probably somehow connected to, there has to be consciousness in the universe because we're at a point of consciousness somewhere. So consciousness exists. And so where does this consciousness come from? And what's the universal consciousness that's the fabric of the universe? And the more we study it, the more we realize that, you know what? These esoteric beliefs are probably really scientifically grounded.
We just don't know it yet. We just don't know what the science is yet.
Oh yeah, well listen, in 1900, I think it was like maybe 1898 or something. It was like just at the end of the 19th century. There was a meeting of the Royal Society of London, So the smartest people on the planet got together for the scientific conference. And then Lord Kelvin, who's the dude who calculated absolute zero, he says, thanks to the scientific endeavor, between now and the end of the century, nature will have revealed all of her secrets to us, and there will be nothing left to discover. Now we look back with like 120 years of wisdom. It's like, these people are idiots. So I'm thinking, oh, wait a minute. That means in 120 years, people are going to look at us and say, if these people were idiots.
Yeah, the more is yet to be revealed.
Oh, yeah.
More is yet to be revealed.
And so it's that myopic arrogance that we're like, yeah, we know everything.
Oh, yeah. And that will be that will be to our detriment and destruction. We will do a really great job at killing ourselves if we're not we're going down that path. I'm very fascinated with what you're talking about. Well, I could just talk to you for days about it. Fascinating. And as an aside, I have a goal of getting my master's in positive psychology with Dr. Seligman. I know. I wrote him a letter of gratitude too, because he's another man who's changed my life. And he replied to me. Anyway, he just said thank you for your email. But anyway, it felt very heartfelt and genuine. I'm fascinated with what we can do in this field, and I'm interested in knowing what you do in this field as it relates to leadership. As I mentioned, having worked in HR now for 20 years, I have been searching for the humanity and human resources. And I realized that I wasn't missing anything, just that for the most part, while present in pockets, whether it's certain organizations or just certain people, as a collective within Canada and North America, the humanity and human resources is kind of absent.
Really?
Oh, you've seen a different side. That makes me so happy. Tell me your experience.
Well, but I have the privilege, listen, I've always felt like an outsider my whole life, and I've only started to realize recently that that's actually a superpower. Because when I meet somebody, I have no idea what their hierarchical role in the organization is. I just meet a person. And so I'll chat with a person, and people say, oh, do you know who you were just talking to? I'm like, yeah, I was talking to Bob here who wanted to be like a race car driver when he was a little boy, and he loves to go hiking. He's like, no, but do you know who that was? Like, yeah, I'm telling you who that was. That's Bob, who dreamed of being a race car driver when he was a little boy. No, that's the president of the company. Now, that's who you think he is. Mm-hmm. So I don't know why I've had the privilege of just meeting actual people. And I get it. I mean, look, I was in a very hierarchical and rigid structured organization in the military, but even then, I think I had the privilege of meeting real people, despite the roles and the ranks and all the other stuff.
So
I don't.
One-on-one, I agree with you. One-on-one, I agree with you. But then I think the armor gets put on.
Yes.
When we're talking about in the context of leading organizations. And yes. I'm not actually meaning this actually to be critical of our folks, because I have no question in my mind that there is a desire and intent to do good. There's no question in my mind about that.
And even if it's wrong, it's a great delusion to hold. We're all delusional, so we might as well pick a delusion that's helpful, right? And
right, I know, right.
Delusion where benevolent and caring and doing their best, then believe that the world is full of malevolence and, I might be delusional, but I'm choosing that because that's the world I want to live in.
That's the world I want to live in.
In terms of leadership, let's come back to mirror neurons for a sec, okay?
Yeah.
I think leadership is a really lonely place to be because I don't know if it's the corporate structure, I don't know if it's something, but leaders tend to be dehumanized themselves. So when they have to make difficult management decisions, nobody goes up to them and says, how are you coping today? And they'll usually fall apart in a puddle of tears, like, oh, it's the worst day of my life. I can't believe I had to do this horrible thing, lay people off or restructure my department, or, during COVID, I had to cut 20% of my budget, or whatever horrible human decision. Like, inviting them back into their humanity and giving them a safe place, I think for everybody, but we always tell about, it's really important to give your employees recognition and, validate their efforts and all this. Okay, well, when was the last time we all walked into the boss's office, gave the boss a high five and say, hey, boss, I just want you to know something. Doing a good job. I got your back. I think you'd be surprised how rarely that happens for them and how much they're craving that, because they have no clue. Am I doing a good job? Am I a terrible boss? I'm trying to be a better person, but am I really? So so back to the mirror neurons. When I was doing my PhD, I shared a tiny little office, 5 foot squared with my friend, Dr. Rick Miners. And so every day, so I was doing my research on resilience in the military, and he was doing research on the benefits of meditation. And so every day he's like, George, you got to read this article about meditation. It's amazing, like frontal cortex activation and, calming your amygdala. It's like, yeah, Rick, I'll get around to it one day. No, you really got to start meditating. It's going to be so good for you. You should really integrate it into your study. It's like, yeah, Rick, I know. So anyways, one day he invites me over to supper and I meet his wife. And she said, oh, what's it like to work with my husband? I said, listen, I love your husband. He's brilliant. He's one of the most amazing human beings I've met. But he drives me nuts with his meditation all the time. And she's like, yeah, me too. He talks about it all the time. I can't stand it anymore. I said, well, how do you deal with it? And so here's the best answer I ever heard. She says, well, anyways, I told him I would start meditating when I saw that it made a difference in him. I was like, oh yeah. So if we want to influence people and be good leaders, we have to sort of be the model of, hey, here's a path that I'm following to try to be a better human being. And I'm not going to force anybody to follow this path, but, maybe someone to say, oh, wait a minute, how come you're doing so well? But I want whatever you're having. So inspiring people instead of coercing them or convincing them.
I like that.
Inspiring. And when that motivation comes from inside, like, we live in this world where we externalize so much, like, oh, carrots and sticks, rewards and punishments. Let's try to motivate people by coercing them with some extrinsic motivator. Well, what if you give them enough room for their internal motivation to emerge? They'd blow your mind. So a couple of weeks ago, my kids decided they want to go camping in the backyard. They threw up a tent. They smuggled all kinds of junk food in there. It was like brilliant, and it was freezing. It snowed that night. And I was watching them thinking, you know what? If I had told them we were going to go camping in the backyard, there's no way they would have done it. They would have complained the whole time. They would have resisted. But because I gave them enough space, it just all of a sudden, this intrinsic motivation emerged, and they just blew my mind with their brilliance and creativity. It's like, yeah, let's trust the people that we work with are brilliant and creative and motivated and probably smarter than us in a lot of ways. And so my job as a boss is to get out of their way and make their job easier so they can amaze me.
I love that. Do you want to be my boss? Wait a second. I'm my own boss. Never mind.
Hey, listen, I've prided myself on trying to be the smartest kid in the room my whole life. And I got to tell you, it's exhausting and I ain't that smart. And so I was like, yeah, it's a lot of pressure that leaders put on themselves to be the smartest kid in the room. And I think sometimes checking our ego at the door and say, okay, if I take a step back, how are the people that I surround myself with going to amaze me today? I think we'd be really surprised how they grow and emerge.
I am writing a book right now. It's going to be out in September, called Humanizing Leadership. And so I would love to send you a copy, and I would love to hear what you think.
Yeah.
You'll hear about mirror neurons in there.
I want the audio version so I can listen to it in the traffic when I'm stuck there.
Oh, so I'll really get in your head because you'll be listening to my voice. I will do that. I will send you that.
I got to tell you, I love learning, and I had forgotten that I love learning. And then I discovered audiobooks, and I read 52 audiobooks last year.
Oh my gosh.
And I rediscovered the joy of learning.
Oh, I love that. So that's actually, I'd love to move into, we've got about 5 minutes left. So I've got some rapid fire questions that I wanted to ask you if I may. Okay. And the first one is, do you have a go-to book or podcast that you recommend? So maybe tell us about one of the best, one that comes to mind, that's a standout audiobook that you listen to.
The Louise Reed Show. Apparently she has some stellar guests.
Aside from that one, of course.
Oh, wow. Do I have top ones? Man, oh, man, oh, man. You mentioned Martin Seligman earlier. And I always like to hear the story behind the story. So the way he got into positive psychology is that he had grandkids one day, and he realized that he was a grumpy old man. And he didn't want to be a grumpy old man anymore. And he wanted to be a vivacious and, energizing force in the lives of his kids. And so he chose to learn how to be happy. And that's such a powerful paradigm, choosing. And I think we underestimate the power of choice. Like, oh, well, how do you stay positive in the face of COVID? Well, because you choose. You choose to be grumpy and miserable and, collapse on yourself, or you choose to say, listen, there are people who count on me that make it so that I have to be bigger than myself. And so I'm going to have to step up, level up, as you said. Mm-hmm. So anything by Martin Seligman, Authentic Happiness is like his magnum opus. That's a great place to start. Some of the writers that are just like, man, I wish I could be that brilliant. Like, what's his name? He wrote Stumbling into Happiness. I forget the name of the author, but he is just such a good writer. He's funny and brilliant and human and compassionate. Anybody who wants to be a better human being has to read Esther Perel. She's a dating relationship guru, and she is just one of the most brilliant, compassionate minds I've ever come across. So anything by her. She's like hypnotizing with her. She's like, the kind of human being we all strive to be.
I love that.
Who else?
That's it. That's all we've got time for. I got one last question though. Because I really wanted, I know, I told you this would happen. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Wow. That's not fair, because that's a question I ask my patients, and I never thought anybody would ask.
Well, I could ask you a different one instead. Maybe an easier.
I'll be honest with that. That's a tough one. It really, it's a touching question, because I haven't always liked myself. And so this whole idea of, meeting my previous selves and having some genuine compassion and admiration for their journey that allowed me to be who I am with the skills that I have and the platform that I have to make a difference. So I would say to my younger self, hey, you're a beautiful human being, and don't hide your gifts from the world,
Wow.
That's probably what I'd say, something like that.
I appreciate you sharing that. So thank you for doing that little exploration with me today. And this is the top of the hour. And I have to say, as I did at the outset, I'm beyond thrilled to have been able to connect with you again in this way, in a very different way than when we first connected. I have so much gratitude for the path that you helped set me on, and thrilled that I got to share you with my listeners. So thank you so much, Dr. George.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Louise, because when I was doing all my clinical training, all my clinical supervisors would say, George, you bring too much of yourself to the session. You have to be like a blank slate, like that old psychoanalytic cold. I was like, I can't do that. Like, I'm all in. And so I'm really glad that you validate that what was underlined as my biggest weakness is actually my biggest strength. So thank you for that.
Yes,
appreciate it.
and I am a happy recipient of that. And of course, thank you to all of you as well, my Lady Boss listeners, for tuning in to today's show, and invite you to reach out to me directly at louisehreed.com if you have any questions or want to talk about coaching, speaking engagements, or leadership consulting. Let's all live inspired, grow together, be brave, be bold, and be happy. And until next Tuesday, I'm Louise H. Reed, wishing all of you an amazing day. And in the words of Dr. George, leave some room for magic in your life. Goodbye, my friends.
You rock, Louise. Thank you.